Testing 1 2. You're listening to the sounds of DJ Frankie Paradise.
House music. I'm your host, Tyrone Lowe, and we're talking about house music today. This is my guest, Frankie Paradise, a resident Brooklyn DJ, and we're going to talk about what is house music. So, Frankie, what is house music?
Tyrone, house music to me, they always say it's a spiritual thing and a feeling. To me, it is a spiritual thing and a feeling. It's both, actually. It hits the root of the soul. You know, I think that it comes back derived from disco. Disco turned into house music, and it's just a good vibe set of music. It's clean, it's spiritual, it's loving, it's emotional, it's sensitive. If you let it in, that's what it is to me.
So, house music in the older days, it was the disco era, and then it converted into house music. So, how do you actually, how do you actually compare the olden days of house music to today's house music?
Okay, I remember when I used to go to the garage, Paradise Garage, I was basically more into disco classics, which was what they were playing at the time. Right. And then when the whole house movement came in, I believe it was 1985, 84, 85, it was harder. It was very hard. It was that Marshall Jefferson, that's when Fast Eddie, I believe, all that Chicago house came in. It was it was just hard, very hard beat. It just has evolved. In my opinion, it has evolved. It's become softer. It has spread out. Now you have soulful house, you have Afro house, gospel house, tech house. So it's broadened. It's broadened, and I think it's a good thing. Okay. You know, it's a good thing.
How do you feel that technology has actually took part of as far as house music itself compared to the olden days where, there was classics and DJs were doing more manual labor as far as, programming music? How do you feel that it has actually took effect?
In my opinion, at the time when the first early days of house came out, it was really, the beat was flat. It was more flat to me. I think that's why I didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Now, you have more Afrocentric, and they're using, it's engineered in the studio, but they are also using instruments, some studios. And so it's become softer. It just has broken up softer now. Like I said, becoming Afro, soul, all those beats. It's just a different sound now than if you think of the record like Marshall Jefferson, Move Your Body. Talk about house. It was just so fast and so hardish. Where now you have soulful house and it's more tranquil in a sense.
Spirituality, define spirituality in the house movement, because soulful house is like a spiritual sort of thing, and you find that mostly high-level female artists are doing house music. From what I'm hearing a lot about, South Africa is really booming as far as the music industry doing Afro house. How do you compare it to the States, man? And right now, as far as the United States compared to different countries like the UK and things like that, who intensifies you the most, as far as those countries?
In those countries, like in terms of female artists, vocalists, one that I particularly like is like her sound is like Monique Bingman. Okay. Because she's Afrocentric but soft, and she gives you that jazzy sort of. It's a softer sound again, and I like that. And I do like Afro, and I like the whole Black Coffee sound. But that's more of the groove. I like that more smooth jazz house.
Would you say back in the days, the texture of house music, the aura of like the Lolita Holloways, the Jocelyn Browns, and things of that nature, how would you compare it to now to the actual artists that they have out today?
when the house music came out, when they were using Jocelyn Brown and Lolita Holloway, again, these were artists that came from also the disco era. Lolita Holloway, Love Sensation. So you think of that, Jocelyn Brown, Ain't No Mountain High. So even now, if you would, they say Jocelyn Brown, if you used her now, you know her sound. You know that's Jocelyn Brown. And it's compared to the new artists now that we have. You can definitely distinguish the sound. You know, if you were listening to Lolita Holloway, if you were listening to Jocelyn Brown versus listening to Barbara Tucker or Monique Benman or Cherie Hicks, those female vocal artists, house artists.
I like the legendary stuff like Double Exposure, you know, things of that disco era. Do you think this disco ever come back?
I don't think it'll come back. I think that it'll survive. It'll stay alive because we're keeping it going. DJs from that time, you know, and it's important because those were the roots. Those were the roots of that time. House is great. House is awesome. It has evolved. But let's not forget where it started. And that started from that disco era.
So we're going to convert this over a little bit. So let us know about you, Frankie. You've been around for a while, and tell us about yourself, how you got started and where you're at now.
I started actually in the late 80s. So I'm one of the late ones that came out. In the early 80s, 1982, 83, I went to the garage. And it was an amazing experience. Fell in love with the whole sound system, Larry Levan, the whole thing. And I was inspired. He was basically my inspiration. And I started DJing and practicing and collecting music. I just got obsessed with the whole movement of DJing. And 1987 is when I started doing circuit parties in the Bronx. My first party was here in the Bronx, and then I moved to the other boroughs, and it continued. And then I started working with Mike Stone. And through Mike Stone, I got to work with T. Scott from Better Days, Ken Carpenter, and it just took a life of its own.
You're talking a lot of legends here.
Yeah. And then I met Charles Jackson, and I started working with him, and then I started doing my own parties. And so far and so forth, and just...
It's so funny that you mentioned Paradise Garage, man. Back in those days, Paradise Garage was like a family by itself.
Yes.
It could never actually be classified. It's just actually authentic.
It was.
Do you think that any clubs will ever remind you, or do you think there ever be anything like the Paradise Garage?
No. After the Paradise Garage, there was one Club Shelter. Came close. It did give you that sense of feeling that you used to get at the Paradise Garage, but I don't think there'll never be a place like the Paradise Garage. It was unique in its time. I think it was ahead of its time. Sound versus today, even though the sound equipment has evolved, but at that time to have that system, that Richard Long system, that was amazing.
Oh, Richard Long, yes.
Yeah.
Frankie, as far as being a DJ yourself, tell them how they can actually get in contact with you, email address, things of that. Give them some information.
Sure. I could be reached I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, Frankie Paradise, my website, frankieparadise.com, and that's basically it. Okay. Or I'm also doing circuit parties. I do Disco Party Fundraiser. I do the Happiness Lounge in Brooklyn every Friday. I'm in Coney Island almost every summer. I spin on the boardwalk. And wherever I'm booked.
So thanks for sharing the love.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is about house music, and I hope everybody got something out of it. And we tend to let everybody know what it's all about, the culture of it, the spirituality of it, and that's about it. So everybody have a nice day.
So, we share the same blood, as we stand here together to feel the power of love. Let's embrace each other to reach our destiny.